Hey everybody, Luke McElroy from Best Performance Consulting, joined with Nick and Tyler. Welcome back to another episode of the Physiology Secrets podcast. What we're going to talk about today is just smart load monitoring. So we've got a lot of athletes who are obviously resorting to just doing running perhaps. Maybe they don't have an indoor trainer and obviously the pools are closed so they can't swim. A lot of people are just going to running and increasing their running load quite quickly as an alternative to other training methods, and they're getting injured and sore, and we just want to talk about the pros and cons of doing that and just how to progressively overload so that you can complete running but not obviously get injured at the same time. So Nick, do you want to run through some things that you've seen? You said on social media you've seen a few things happening and sort of a bit of background behind that.
Yeah, I think the common things that we're seeing a lot at the moment is athletes going from no running to any running, and then either no running to high volume. It's just the common overuse injuries that we're seeing time and time again. So hearing a lot of like Achilles tendinopathy, hearing a lot of plantar fascia type issues, calf issues, knee trouble, hip trouble, ITB, all of the classic overuse injuries where you're just going from nothing to a hell of a lot, running 3-4 times a week where you normally wouldn't. And it's almost that type of thing that a lot of athletes are just, I guess, training for the sake of training because it gets them an excuse to go outside and do something, as opposed to maybe you're only training 2 run sessions a week if you're a triathlete normally. Now you're going out and doing 4 because you can't swim.
Yeah.
So a lot of overuse issues around it, mainly just from, I guess, probably stemming from a bit of boredom and just being able to get outside is the main thing. So it's a positive in one respect, going out and running, but negative being a lot of athletes getting injured.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those, it's a fine line because I'm probably running 70% more than I was because I'm not cycling because you boys have stolen the trainers from me, and I'm not swimming because we can't.
Yeah.
It's right there.
It's a trainer.
So yeah, I'm probably running 4 days a week, whereas I normally do 2 days a week, maybe 3. But obviously just spacing it out so it doesn't hurt me. But the difference between swimming load and cycling load compared to running is cycling and swimming is non-weight bearing. It's not going to have that bone stress and that tendon stress that you get with running. And I remember reading somewhere, I'm obviously not a physio, but I remember reading somewhere that you don't feel like the tendon load or the tendon stress until like 3 weeks after the session. So you obviously get the DOMS and the soreness, but the load that you get, your Achilles, for example, might take 3 weeks to recover as opposed to 2 days of just taking it easy. What have you found, Tyler? I was talking about swimming before.
I guess there's probably 2 groups of people. It's probably 2 groups of people that we're talking about. There's what you've just described, people who are runners or have some sort of running background who are now running more. So I guess those people hopefully have got a good enough understanding or some understanding of their body and some cues with little sore points or niggles to know if you've gone from 2 a week to 4 a week, you maybe will be able to recognise those signs. And then there's, I guess, the community we're talking a lot about are the swimmers that now mostly cannot swim at all. I don't know, my brothers are prime candidates. They're now on the bike and running basically every day, who don't have any running background really, or any, I guess, point of reference to know when things are going wrong. So I personally, when I look back at, I've been running reasonably consistently for probably 10 years. Those first 3-4 years, I went through injury. There was sore knees and shins and feet and all sorts of things, and I think it's probably twofold. It's getting that running in. I did come from a swimming background, so possibly it was that bone strength and going from a non-weight bearing sport and then getting into the running. So the conditioning that could have taken 3-4 years, but as well as starting to learn about running, from running technique to equipment, shoes that work for me, shoes that don't work for me. I'm very pedantic with my shoes. I know when I said, one of my brothers commented the other day as I took off a pair of runners and put on a pair of runners to go running, and I was like, well, they're not my running runners. I've worn them at work all day, and then I'm going to put a new pair of runners on to go out running. So little things like that, which I think if you're going to go run twice a week with 2 or 3 days off in between, you're probably going to get away with, if you're not going to go silly, you're going to get away with a lot. But if you're not going for no running, you're trying to run every second day, 4 times a week, little things like that they're probably going to add up, and the stuff that you learn by doing, but you're probably going to go through definitely some soreness and possibly some injuries too. So how to avoid it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I guess as you said, if you're a swimmer without a running background and you go out and run and your technique could be, you know whether it's a good technique or a poor technique, but either way, using muscles that are not used to that stress, that is obviously going to cause some potential injury concerns. And if you look at swimmers that are traditionally, if they're in full training load, they might do a morning and an afternoon session. Like, you can't do that running. You're gonna hurt yourself. So that always that psychological aspect of either going and doing some other low load activities such as cycling, or just understanding that you can't do the same load as you would running compared to swimming.
And if you're a serious swimmer, you're not built to run. You've got
Yeah.
a whole lot of
Yeah.
muscle upstairs that,
Yeah.
you know, if you stand Michael Phelps next to a runner, it's clear the differences. Michael Phelps carrying around 100 kilograms of muscle,
Yeah.
which is now just adding more stress to muscles that aren't used to it and joints that aren't used to it, a technique that may or may not be okay. So it's a big change, and you can't just go from your 10 swimming sessions a week to,
No.
even you might think 4 sessions a week is not many, but that's a huge load through your body.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of general training recommendations, like what would you, from a general overload perspective, Nick, what would you be recommending in terms of progressive overload for in general, and then maybe we'll come into running specifically?
Yeah, in general, like the 10% rule is always the way to go. It's like, don't overload a session or add on by sort of more than 10%. Probably go even more cautious than that if you're coming from that really low base. Yeah. And it's probably more the starting point, I think, that a lot of athletes having an issue with, and then they're trying to overload on that. So the overload might be okay, but if you're going out your first run, you haven't run in however many months, or you haven't run at all for the last however many years, and then going out and doing a 10k run straight off the bat is probably not the best way to start. I mean, minimum stimulus for a long, slow aerobic run session is 20 minutes. So if you're going at a pretty moderately easy pace, you're probably not covering much more than, depending on what pace that is.
Yeah, 3.5, 4K.
3.5, 4K. Like, it's not a lot. You don't have to go out and do 10k straight out.
Yeah.
Or you don't have to go out and do an hour straight out. Just progressively build it in, and then as you build it up, it's the type of thing that you might only add on 4 to 5 minutes at a time each run, or each week. Even maybe if you're doing a couple of runs a week at sort of 20 minutes, and the next week you do one at 20 minutes, and then the other runs at 25, and then you move those runs up by 5 minutes, however you want to do it, but keep it very, very progressive. And almost err on the side of caution. I'd probably prefer in this period rather than going, all right, I ran 2 weeks worth of a 5k run and then another 5k run. Now I'm going to go try and do 2 10k runs next week. It's just not going to happen. Yeah,
as you said, so the general rule being that 10%, but again, I don't think I've ever used that for runners specifically. Yeah. Cycling and swimming you can, because it's a bit lower stress on the bones and the muscles, but when you've got the load bearing of running, like I'm more of a 2 to 5% sort of overload, just to be really cautious with that, which I think is really important.
You got to be mindful of the intensity jump in that as well. Like if you're feeling like you're getting better at running, you're starting to run faster, you add on 5 minutes, but you've also increased your pace significantly in that same run. That's a different jump. Like, that may not be 2 or 5% added on. That may be, if you've taken 30 seconds per K off your pace, if you're at 4 minute K pace as opposed to 4:30s, then that run is maybe like a 15% overload, because you've added minutes plus you've added an intensity factor.
Yeah, and that just comes back to what load is. It's frequency times by duration times by intensity. So if you go out for a 60-minute run at a 3 out of 10 intensity, and the next day you feel good and you do a 60-minute run at 6 out of 10 intensity, well, you've just doubled the load, even though you're only running for 60 minutes. So you've got to be really careful with that as well. And then I guess the timing of where we are, with no races being on the cards right now, and we hear a lot, the endurance maintenance mode is sort of the phrase that everyone's using at the moment, and that's the other thing. Like, you don't necessarily need to keep overloading your running. I won't do more than 4 times a week running. I just don't see the need to do it. It's enough to keep me or probably even increase my fitness, but at least maintain my fitness, get the mental health benefits, and all the rest of just getting outside. But once you get to a certain base that you're comfortable with for your maintenance, then you can look at doing things like strength training, including other things to future-proof yourself for when you're back into a proper training load. Is there anything else we need to cover? That's fun.
Yeah, days off. Like I especially if you're new to running, I wouldn't be running back-to-back days. At the start it might be every third day, so you get 2 days in between. Then on that overload, if you do change that to every second day, you've added an extra run in, so you probably don't need to be making those other runs longer. You strictly speaking, you're going to go above that 10% by adding a new run in, so that at times it's going to happen, so be really wary of that. And I think the fatiguing and the injury is almost a snowball effect. When you get tired, you try and run when you're tired, your technique then gets worse than it was, which then puts more load, and you start to snowball, and pushing, especially with running, I think pushing through sore spots and fatigue is the worst thing you're going to be able to do. If you are feeling sore from getting new to running, maybe think about, can you find a stationary bike or a bike to still get some aerobic benefit without that load. Walking on every other day. If you want to get out every day, I'd be running every 2 or 3 days. Go for a walk on those other days for half an hour. It's good for the mental health benefits. You get the blood flow around, and might help you recover for those next runs.
Yeah. Anything else?
Do you want to touch on maybe the surface that you're running on? Like going out and running on grass versus gravel versus concrete?
I mean, it just comes back to biomechanics, doesn't it? So the softer the surface, the less impact or less force that your body's going to feel, but then you don't want it to negatively affect your running economy either. So generally speaking, you run on grass is going to be better than running on concrete for that benefit. Like, don't go barefoot running. Do not experiment with barefoot running now. There is a time and a place for that, but it's if you're very advanced and have a good strength base, you know exactly what you're doing. So cushioning is good. So where your runners run on the grass, running on a track, like the worst thing you can run on, in my opinion, is going to be concrete if you're not used to it. And I do it all the time. Like back in the footy days, like we would be running, or you do all your training on grass, and you go out for a 20-minute run on the concrete, and you're sore for 5 days.
It's taken me the better part of probably the last 4 weeks to get used to running on asphalt again, because I've been just running on grass until we got locked down. So it takes a bit. But you got to then consider, well, if you're running on grass, as the weather gets a little bit worse, if it gets a bit wet, is that going to be heavy under your feet? Is that going to cause a bit of fatigue as well? So you do have to manage it a little bit. But
you want to be careful on your grass too, especially with no sporting events going on. Those ovals may not be maintained like they usually are, with even debris, rubbish, who knows what could be there, and potholes and stuff. If you can find a grass athletics track, you're on a winner there. Flat, beautiful to run on. But just keep that in mind.
So monitoring like your cardiovascular load, so to speak, it's you're at 2 to 10%, keep 2 to 5, just because it's quite stressful. And then on the muscular side of things, yes, it's the total volume and the number of contractions, all that, but it's also the surface that you run on. So you can just be really smart with that. It's not an exact science. Say 2 to 10% for overload. So that means, hey, if I do 60 minutes in a run 1 week, I can go up to 66 minutes the next week. Again, theoretically, that's correct. Everybody's going to be different depending on your running economy, the surface that you're running on, the sleep you get, the life stress. That's where it comes into 50% science, 50% art. You've got to listen to your body, be really smart. As I said, I've gone from probably doing two sessions a week to 3 or 4, depending how I feel. And the key word is depending on how I feel. Like, I did a balls out session the other day on Thursday, and I was due to go again on Saturday, but I didn't. So I did Friday and Saturday, and then I did an easy run yesterday. And I feel pretty good. Should be right for a high intensity session next time. So mixing it up. Don't do hard session, easy session, and 3 days off. Mix it up. Hard session, rest, easy session, rest, hard session, so on and so forth. Like it's kind of a common sense approach. But in summary for today, 2 to 10% is the general rule. But be aware, if you don't have a running background, be careful, because you are going to get the additional load on the tendons and the ligaments and all that sort of stuff, which you might not feel until 3 weeks later. You can minimise the impact of that through things like running on grass or flat grass instead of running on concrete to reduce the load, but just really listen to the body, and don't do too much too quickly. Start doing some cycling sessions. Don't just do running sessions if that's the case. And once you get to a comfortable baseline of whatever that is for you, 2, 3 or 4 running sessions a week, you don't necessarily have to keep overloading. You can just maintain it and build yourself up with some strength maintenance work as well, ready for the full training load again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll speak to you again soon. Bye for now.